Hi, this is Evan, and welcome to Wine Couch TV. This week, as we so often do, we're going to focus on a particular area. We're going to talk a little bit about it, talk about a couple of wines that come from that specific region, and then delve into the food pairings that they love. This week's region that we're going to focus on is the Sonoma Coast. Now, the Sonoma Coast sounds really sexy, and if you probably follow a lot of the publications you read, it is in the news and en fuego, but it's actually very misunderstood. The appellation itself is gigantic and indeed encompasses parts of the Russian River, parts of the Carneros, as well as that traditional Sonoma Coast that actually flows up there by Mendocino County and Occidental and Fort Ross and all those other places like that. When we speak of the Sonoma Coast in the wine biz, most of us are talking about what most people will tell you is the true Sonoma Coast. Now, the true Sonoma Coast encompasses sort of the coolest areas of the Russian River and follows the coast north past Bodega Bay up into areas around Freestone and Fort Ross and places like Sea Ranch. They don't make grapes at Sea Ranch, but it's right in that same area. These areas tend to be very, very cool climate, and favor particularly two grapes, Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. Literally, this is probably one of the coolest areas of the state, and indeed there are years where the fruit doesn't get quite as ripe. You can literally see the ocean, the Pacific Ocean, from many of the higher altitude vineyards within this true Sonoma Coast. What I like about this area is it gets a very long growing season, and you get a delicacy and an elegance to the wines. If you're interested in power wine, and when people think of Russian River, particularly the Bend part of Russian River closer to Healdsburg, they think of the sort of rich, almost powerful Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays that come from that area. You're not going to find that in the true Sonoma Coast. Sonoma Coast is really all about elegance, all about finesse, and they have a much more delicate character. So if you're looking for the big stuff, probably stay away, go to the Russian River. But if you're really interested in true delicacy, true complexity, and that peacock scale of intricacy of flavors that come in the finish, this is an area for you. I've picked two producers and a Pinot Noir and a Chardonnay that I think are very emblematic of what's going on in the area. The first wine I have for you is the 2006 vintage of Flowers Winery's Andreen Gale Chardonnay. Now, Flowers makes a number of vineyard-designated wines as well as a straight Sonoma Coast Chardonnay, but I thought this one was very, symbolizes exactly what I wanted to show you. In the nose of this wine, you have a very linear character of sort of apple, quince, and ripe pear fruit. There's a nice undercurrent of fleshy white stone fruit, sort of like white peach, that just sort of embellishes that citric character without being over the top of that tree fruit character. And there's just this nice depth touch of oak that gives you just a hint of spice to it without giving you that sort of cumbersome, buttery, heavy caramel character. It's very elegant and, as I said before, very, very subtle. The palate of the wine is very delicate, appropriately fleshy for a Chardonnay without being overbearing. The alcohol in it is very balanced, so it's not full-bodied, and it's got a very long, expansive finish. The styles of Chardonnay that come out of the Sonoma Coast sort of crave shellfish and simple treatments of it. They crave fish in general, and generally the simpler the better. Anything from a tartare to a fish carpaccio to a basic crudo to simple plate of sashimi is a great vehicle. And obviously, if you want to go something heavier, halibut or sole or trout or a nice simple white fleshed fish is a great way to go. Now, the Pinot that I wanted to show you is from Dutton Goldfield, and this is their 2006 McDougal Vineyard Pinot Noir, also from the Sonoma Coast. And this is a wine that, again, I think epitomizes the elegance of what Pinots in this area are all about. The nose of this shows a very fragrant, sort of sexy, exotic combination of both sort of sandalwood, a little bit of cranberry, just a touch of cherry, and a little bit of almost like a pomegranate type of aroma. A lot of complexity going on there. And again, this deft balance of wood that comes off in this sort of exotic sandalwood type character without being overbearing. Again, elegance rather than power. Very bright in the mouth, again, not overly generous, with a lot of flavor going on, again, sort of essentially mirroring the flavors that we talked about in the aroma, and a nice long finish. The tannins here are very soft, very supple, very appropriate for the style. The challenge with Pinots that come from the Sonoma Coast is not to overdo them with food, and these are the styles of wine that could be easily overpowered. So I would stay away from bigger red meats. While a lot of Pinot Noir can handle lamb, this style of wine I'd probably back off. Here, richer preparations of poultry, perhaps with some exotic spicing. I'm thinking taking a quail or something like that, and maybe a little bit of North African spice, again, on the lower side of things would be good. Spanish spices would be nice, pimenton, things like that. But again, take your foot off the accelerator and keep them very mild. Okay, tuna would also be very, very good here. Anyway, the Sonoma Coast, as you're thinking about it, is an area that requires exploration, but if you're interested in elegance, if you're interested in delicacy, if Burgundy is your game, then the Sonoma Coast is a good place to be. Before we leave today, our Wine Couch word of the week. Actually, 2 words. These words of the week are cool climate. Now, I reference this as the type of place that the Sonoma Coast is, but when you hear cool climate associated with wine, generally they're referring to places that have a fairly cool growing season and a longer hang time than most. So what you're not going to get in a lot of cool climate wines are big ample wines with lots of extract, lots of alcohol, and lots of power. They tend to be more elegant, and they tend to favor grapes, obviously, that thrive in these climates. So you're not going to find Cabernet. You're not going to find Syrah in cool climate areas typically. What you're going to find more successfully are grapes like Chardonnay, like Pinot Noir. Some cool climate Syrah exist out there, but even things like Merlot and a little bit of Riesling thrive in cooler climates. Anyway, that's all the time we have for this week. Until we see you next week, go out there, explore the Central Coast, or rather Sonoma Coast, and we'll see you later. Take care.